I got a chance to play this card in the pre-release, and I noticed that. But this card is absolutely absurd. I played it in the early part of the game, and I started making zombies, and my opponent just looked at it like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this thing. Like, I just don't happen to have a removal spell in my hand, and now you're just going to go off. And I'm just like, I am. And I did, and I won. And then later in a different game, I played it much more in the mid to late part of the game, and it was close. The board state was close-ish, right? And I started making zombies. And that halted my opponent's attack because they didn't want to start trading off ground creatures for my zombies.
For your lands that you discarded.
My lands, yeah, my nonsense that I couldn't cast or it wasn't very good. And then they thought, okay, well, he's probably going to start attacking me and I'm going to be able to like manage the zombie situation. I looked at my life totals and I was ahead on life, but I was at like 18, facing no pressure. And I'm just like, go. Make a zombie, draw a card, and they're like, crap. So they had to play a sweeper out of their hand because they knew that I was just going to sit there and just start drawing a ton of cards and just going off with this card. This is on a 1-mana creature.
Yeah.
This creature cost me 1 mana to cast.
And like, in the situation that you just detailed, when your opponent's not lucky enough to have a sweeper, they have to just start attacking with every creature that they have every turn to hope to end the game in their favor. Because they know that the game's going to end not in their favor if they don't do anything. Right. So...
Yeah, I love Crypt Breaker. I give it an A. The card takes over. It's not Pack Rat. It doesn't clean the game up quite as quickly, but it felt Pack Rat like. It felt here's the thing. When you played Pack Rat in Limited, you didn't and sometimes in Constructed if you're Owen, the thing that occurred to you as you started activating the Pack Rat was that you didn't have to do anything else. Like, you could have been drawing the Ace of Spades and Jokers off the top of your deck because it didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was activating Pack Rat every turn, and your opponent just, once the window was closed, just didn't have any ways to deal with that. And Crypt Breaker feels similar. It's like, well, I could no, I'll just make a zombie, right? Because once I get my third zombie, I'm going to start drawing cards, and then the game's just done. Like, they just cannot keep up with that. The big difference is that all the zombies are 2/2s from Crypt Breaker, where Pack Rat got, bigger, and then eventually just killed your opponent. And this is not going to have that same swing where there's like the critical turn when you make your 4th zombie and now you can attack for 20. That doesn't happen this way, but it rewards you with this grindy aspect of tapping the zombies. So I love me a Crypt Breaker.
Yeah, it's really strong.
It's amazing. Dark Salvation is next. It's XX black for a sorcery at rare. Target player puts X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. It's not that great, but there's more. Then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. So, I think a pretty typical scenario here would be that you've got 5 mana and you're going to make X equal to 2. So 2 + 2 + 1 = 5. You're going to get 2 2/2s and you're going to give a creature, well, at least -2/-2 until end of turn. Though it is worth noting here that it's each zombie that player controls as well.
Yeah, this card is really, really good. Yeah. I like it at a B+ and could easily be an A. The thing is, assume that you haven't drawn enough lands. At 3 mana, it's comparable to Tooth Collector.
Yeah, good point.
Remarkably comparable.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have the upside of the Delirium, but that doesn't decide all that many games anyways. You have to get it, and it has to be relevant. So 3 mana for a 2/2 that gives a creature -1/-1, that's a good rate. And that's the downside of this card. And the upside is you play it for 5, you get to get 4 power and 4 toughness, and you get to kill a 2/2. Now we're talking about like almost Shriekmaw level.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
And it scales up at 7, at 9, which like I don't want to plan to put 7 and 9 mana cards in my deck, but because this is X and you can play it whenever you draw it, it has none of the downside of those. So this card is really good.
Yeah. And again, it does count all your zombies, not just the ones that you got from Dark Salvation. So if you happen to have a Crypt Breaker laying around or, a Gavany Unhallowed or whatever, it's going to count.
That's hugely relevant.
Well. Yeah, it's very relevant.
When you play it for 5, it's like killing a 3/3 or a 4/4 when you're getting 2/2s instead of a 2/2. It totally changes the impact of the card. Absolutely. At 5 mana, if you're killing a 4/4, that's a throttle. That's already a card people are picking high and putting in their deck. And then now you're getting 2 2/2s. You're just getting a Geese's Bidding with your throttle.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, when you put it like that, that's absurd.
Yeah, this is a great card.
Yeah, I'm going to go A- on Dark Salvation. I was actually in the B to B+ range, but you've talked me up, Owen. I think Dark Salvation's that good.
Could easily be there.
Yeah. Liliana, the Last Hope, is next. This is 1 black black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, of course, mythic rare. And she's got the +1 activated ability. Up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until your next turn. And just for clarification's sake, that means that, yes, it's going to keep that -2/-1 on it, even on your opponent's turn for when they're looking to attack you or Liliana.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, come on. -2, so that leaves Liliana at 1 loyalty. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, that's a thing, right? I mean, we do tend to play a little less than half of our decks end up being creatures often, or, at least a third of the deck.
Mm-hmm. And creatures could just get there through combat normally.
Yeah, they can already just be there, right? It's any creature card from your graveyard, not just the ones that got.
It's not just a random ability.
Yeah, still not great. I think you're going to be plussing Liliana a lot more often. And now, if you do the hard work of going from 3 loyalty up to 7, one at a time, and then minusing for the ultimate, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So it's a really weird ability, but it basically just says that you're getting, like, even if your board's completely clear, you're going to get 2 zombies, 2/2 zombies on your end step, and then the next turn you're going to get X
+2.
2 plus 2, so 4, and then anyway, so
6,
you're just going to make a huge army of zombies, which honestly I don't really see how. I think that Ultimate and Liliana is going to be really difficult in limited, just because it's so far up to go. It's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just going to take forever. But
it's rare. It takes forever, and the efficacy of the ability is also going to take kind of forever.
For sure. But all of that being said, I'm a big fan of the card. I still think it's great. Planeswalkers tend to play really well in limited, almost no matter what they do, almost. And Liliana does stuff. -2/-1 to a creature can kill a creature for starters. There's plenty of 1 toughness. You and I talked about that last week on the Commons and Uncommons review about how many creatures actually with 1 toughness there are in the format. And, I went and did my pre-release. I got to play that hound, the one that pings 2 things, and it was killing creatures left and right. You and I were talking about sideboarding in cards, main decking cards, how far can we push this? I think Liliana is going to be killing creatures a decent portion of the time. And even when she doesn't, she's going to neutralize some. I mean, -2/-1 is legit. Like, that even takes, relatively big creatures, a 3/3, and turns it into a 1/2 or whatever. It's not, it's pretty big effect on a creature.
Yeah, I love this card. I have it at an A. I almost think it's to the point where if you're not black going into pack 2 and you open this, you should take it and try to go black. I think that it might even sound silly to say, but I think one of the bigger mistakes that people make is they undervalue planeswalkers in limited. And kind of exactly what you were saying is it almost doesn't even matter what they do. They're so unique and powerful and can just totally dictate the way that the game is played. It can reduce how effective your opponent's cards are just by the fact that they have to attack it and kill it, because they know that if they don't, you're just going to run away with the game.
Right.
The minus, like, you could reasonably in a game of limited pay 3 mana to just give a creature -1 on toughness and not have it be that bad. Paying 3 to kill a smaller creature is not terrible. And you could just pay 3 to just return a creature from your graveyard to hand. It's a little bit, poorly costed, but that's not an embarrassing effect. You're trading a card for a card, move on with your life, But with this, it's going to gain life because of the fact that your opponent is forced to attack it and not attack you. You're often going to be killing creatures because they're going to have to make unfavorable attacks where you can eat some of their creatures. And in those situations where none of that happens, it just wins the game single-handedly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like a creature that, or excuse me, like let's say it was a sorcery that said 1 black, give a target, it's modal. Either give a creature -2/-1 until end of turn, or until the end of your next turn, or get a creature back from your graveyard.
That's a C.
That's a playable Magic card. Like, again, it's not aggressively costed. You're not like, wow, but you're like, you know what? That is flexible enough and has enough impact in the early and late part of the game that I would play that. And Liliana, the Last Hope, is way better than that. Like, you get to do it multiple times. If it is killing 1 toughness creatures, you're just mowing them down. Either ability still leaves you with a planeswalker on the battlefield. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I'd give Liliana the Last Hope an A.
Yep, it's
I
a
think
great
she's
card.
fantastic too. Only 3 mana. Ugh, that's scary.
Bargain barrel, discount price.
Indeed. Newscraft Mob is next. Is 4 black for a 0/0 zombie, but we of course know that there's more to the story. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's a 5/5 for 6. And whenever you cast a spell, you remove a +1/+1 counter from Newscraft Mob. If you do, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield.
For the record, it says whenever a player casts a spell.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So even if your opponent plays a spell, it's going to...
Wow.
Like, even if your opponent goes, like, reduced to ashes, it's going to be a 4/4 and you get a 1/1 before it dies, which makes it a little bit better.
You get a 2/2. Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah. Huh. Which one would I rather have? Because those zombies are going to be jumping off of this thing pretty quickly. If you've ever had a card that cared about whenever anybody casts a spell, and to be clear, a spell is anything, creatures, enchantments, sorceries, all of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they go quickly.
They're going to go fast.
Which I think is not bad, though, right?
Yeah, it's effectively 5 2/2s for 6 mana. It's going to play differently.
A couple of turns later, yeah.
It's going to play a little bit differently and uniquely, but I mean, a lot of the times, those creatures aren't going to be ones that can attack anyways.
Exactly. We're talking about a pretty late game
creatures,
play.
Yeah, by turn 6. So it's like, if you play this and then they play a card and you play a card, it's a 3/3. You pretty much can't attack with it. You're just going to hope to have the counters run out. This card is probably a C+. It's not a bomb rare. It's not a premium card. I would definitely take any of the good black uncommons that we talked about last week over it. But it is powerful. You're going to get 5 2/2s. I mean, it's good. It's a really good rate. I mean, you kind of have to work a little bit for it because of, I mean, maybe your opponent doesn't do anything and you don't do anything. It's a 5/5. That's not bad. I do like the fact that it's resilient to removal.
I like that too. One thing that I think about too is that if I am going to throw this card into combat, you kind of always have to assume it's like at least one notch lower than whatever it's at, right?
Yep. Unless your opponent has no cards in hand or they're tapped out, you have to accept that as a possibility.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this one. I think Newscraft Mob is going to see some play. I think it's going to be a card you're going to play in your black deck, but I'm taking Murder over it.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that's worth noting about this card is it generates a powerful effect as a creature and then goes to your graveyard. So any of the Macabre Waltz, Rise from the Grave.
Good point.
The new what's the 2-mana one called that you return as Cemetery Recruitment.
Yeah.
So if you just run all the counters off this and then Cemetery Recruitment, draw a card, play it again, run all the counters off again. Now you're talking about 10 2/2s, and you paired it with like a throwaway common. So
I like that. Also, this is resilient to some of the enchantment-based removal we've seen, like just in the sense that you spit off a few more zombies.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't really solve their problem.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Sleep paralysis it? I don't think so.
Exactly. I'll make a zombie, and then there's more to come. Yeah, I guess I'll go. I need to see this one in play. I'm going to go B- on Newscraft Mob and then I'll, subject to change as we see it.
Yeah, it's really unique, peculiar. It's interesting card type. So it could totally range anywhere from C+ to A- based on how the format plays, how these zombie decks play out. So really hard to evaluate a card like this, but it's pretty safe to say that if you're black, you should probably take it when you see it and then always play it.
Yeah. Oath of Liliana is next. Is 2 and a black for a legendary enchantment at rare. When Oath of Liliana enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. That's the main part. There is more. At the beginning of each end step, if a planeswalker entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. So we, for most purposes, we can ignore that second chunk of text. So what we have here is 3 mana for a sorcery speed edict effect, meaning that it forces your opponent to sacrifice a creature. Now, if you haven't played these before, your opponent gets to choose, and that is a major downside. I'm not a big fan of this type of effect in Limited because there are just too many incidental creatures, and the fact that you let your opponent choose really hurts the power level on a card like Oath of Liliana. And it's 3 mana too. It's not even like, a particularly good deal.
Yeah, I almost always play with cards like this, and I've been getting burned in this format. Like, To the Slaughter has been extremely bad for me.
Yes, it's not good.
I have it at a D. I think there
Same.
it has matchups where like if your opponent's red green, they're not going to have tokens as often. Usually they're going to be investing 2, 3, 4 mana in their creatures, and you're going to get a fine rate. It's a pretty bad card. I would usually only sideboard it in if I was confident that it was going to trade for a creature of similar casting cost. And I would note that if I had even one Planeswalker in my deck, I would play with this card. I
Yeah.
think it's the value you get, even though small, it does turn it from a card that's kind of bad to a card that's like actually pretty good.
And remember also, if you happen to be pairing this with a color that does have those enchantment based removal, your sleep paralysis and the new pacifism effect.
Oh yeah, of course.
Be careful for that.
Total disaster.
Yeah, it is an unmitigated. Like, it usually just means that your Oath of Liliana, once drawn, stays in your hand, and that is unacceptable.
That's a huge point that people should remember and never forget. That is like it turned. Yeah, if you have one sleep paralysis or one collective restraint, what's the white one?
I don't remember what it's called.
The new pacifism. If you have any card that
choking restraints, it's called.
Even if you end up just putting like a dead weight on their 3/4 or something, it's like any enchantment that's going to sit on your opponent's creature. It makes this card totally useless. I've done that before, where you go like, "Oh, sleep paralysis, that's a good card. Oh, Oath of Liliana, that's a good card." And then you draw both of your good cards in a game, and you're like, "What have I done?"
Yes, I've definitely done that before too.
It's bad. It's really
all right.
bad.
Yeah, we'll go D on Oath of Liliana.
Yeah.
Moving down, we've got Stromkirk Condemned, which is black for a 2/2 vampire horror at rare, and it's got an activated ability. You can discard a card, and vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. You can do this once per turn.
Yeah, pretty good card.
It's fine.
I'm gonna say C+.
Yeah.
It's like black for a 2/2 that's it's gonna play as a 3/3 when blocked, which means it's not gonna get blocked as often. That's a pretty nice card.
It's
playable.
about par for the course, right? Because you can't always turn to it anyway. Yeah.
Yep. The black is a pretty steep cost. You're gonna want I would maybe play this with 8 swamps in my deck, but I wouldn't be happy about it, and you're gonna want 9 or 10.
Yeah, for sure.
It does have the upside of pumping all your vampires and being a madness enabler, but it's going to be unique to your deck. It's not like, because it's rare, it's hard to come up. It's not like you're going to want to first pick it and build around that, because the reward even then is small.
No.
So I would generally lean towards rating it lower, but acknowledging that there's going to be some decks where it's going to be like one of your better cards.
Yeah, to me this is an uncommon power level card that just has a little bit too much going on to be put at uncommon, so it's a rare. But yeah, I don't think that Stromkirk Condemned is the type of card that you need to go out of your way for. But yeah, if you have enough vampires and or madness spells, then it's going to earn its keep. It is a free madness enabler can be pretty good. Let's see here. Oh, we've got Tree of Perdition, which is 3 and a black for a 0/13 plant at Mythic Rare. It's got Defender, so we've got an 0/13 with Defender for 4 mana. Before we get into the activated ability, how do you feel about that?
Just 0/13 for 4?
Yeah.
Bad. I think it's weak.
Okay.
Would be a card I would generally avoid, just because putting a card in your deck for the sole purpose of blocking, but then it can't